Mrs. Hickman, my name is R.W. Knight, and I want to ask you a little bit about your early experience in Oklahoma. Were you born in Indian Territory?
Yes, I was born at Katusa on what is now Oak Street.
And what was your father and mother's name?
My father's name was Martin and McDaniel, and my mother's name was Della McDaniel.
And were you born at Katusa?
Yes, I was born at Katusa, May the 7th, 1895.
And have you lived most of your life in the vicinity of
Yes,
Katusa?
I have.
How large a family did your parents have?
Let's see. This is five children.
5 children?
Yes.
Are they all living in the vicinity now, or have they moved to other parts of the country?
No, there's only one besides myself.
When did your parents come to Katusa?
In about 18 and let's see, 86, I believe. About 1886, I believe.
And they came from where?
Veneta.
From Veneta.
My father was born at Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
Well, now, was he of Indian descent?
He was 3/4 Cherokee.
And your mother?
My mother was, she was part Indian, a little bit, but she didn't get on the roll because she had, on account of the way they arranged that, had been married to, she wasn't married long enough for that.
But your father was
Yes,
on the roll.
And mother was part Indian, a little bit.
Could you tell us a little bit about your early childhood in Katusa, and then tell us a little bit about the community? And if you would, tell us about some of the hardships that you recall in regard to problems relating to your family.
Well, when I can first remember, why we lived in a log house, and my father built a 2-room house, a frame house, but they hauled the lumber in from, I think, from Coffeyville, Kansas. Or there was no lumber yard at Katusa then, but then he sold that house about since I can just barely remember, and moved to the country, and we lived in a native lumber house, 2 rooms, there about 2 or 3 years.
How many people could you recall your early childhood in Katusa? Were there many families that lived in Katusa?
Oh yes, Katusa was, ever since I can remember, Katusa was a good town, had several stores. I can name you some of the stores if you like.
Yes.
Well, it's Denbo and Gravett, and Carlton and Marlowe, and Mulford, Benedict and Morford, and J.S. Day and Son.
Were those all
and
general
Tom
stores?
Dixon. They were general stores.
Yes.
All of these.
Well, they served quite a large territory then, didn't
Yes,
they?
they
In
did.
and around Katusa for probably a number of miles.
Yes, they did. And we had, of course, it was a great shipping point. Lots of cattle shipped there. I used to stand on a board fence down at my neighbors and watch them drive cattle in there. They drove herds and herds in there.
Is that right?
Yes, and we stood on a big heavy board fence and watch them go by.
Was this a shipping point?
Yes, it was a great shipping point. And
could you tell us about something about the early, what about mail, and how did you communicate with people outside of the community?
Well, we didn't have too many ways of communicating then. We sure didn't. We had a post office. A post office there was established in 83. The first postmaster was John Scrimpture. I think there's an error on his name.
Was he related to Will Rogers?
I believe he might be. Yes, I believe he was.
Parents' name Scrimpture?
I believe that's right. I think that's right. And his name was John Scrimpture, our postmaster. and then they moved, the post office was in Katusa after the railroad come in, about 82. The Frisco Railroad come through Katusa in about 82.
And prior to that time, how did the mail move?
Well, it had been over across Spunky Creek, east of the present town of Katusa, about 4 or 5 blocks east, right directly east of Katusa, in a log house.
My goodness. Oh, that's very interesting. Could you tell us anything about you mentioned about the stores. Was there a bank in the town?
Yes, the first bank was there and was built in Katusa in 1901. And I knew one of the cashier. I remember when they built the house. I was about going on 7, you see. I remember when they built the first building. And I knew the cashier because he had the first automobile in Katusa.
I see.
That was interesting to me as a child. I'd never seen one before.
Was there more than one bank during your...
Well, there's been 3 banks in Katusa. The new one now we have is the 3rd bank. We had the First State Bank, and then the Farmers and Merchants Bank, and then the First State Bank that we have there now.
Oh, were the other 2 banks in Indian Territory prior to statehood?
No, the one was. The First State Bank was prior to statehood, and the other one went in 1909, the Farmers and Merchants Bank.
Tell us a little bit about your early schooling there.
Well, I started the school, as I told you. We moved to the country in about 1900, thereabout. And I started school in 1902, and we lived just outside of town, about a mile from town. And I went to what they call the National School. They called it that. And that was, I guess, it must have been Indian school because they charged, they charged for the white children to go to that school. And that school, the last teacher I went to was named Maud Ward. And Miss Pearl Gravitt, that's still living in Tulsa, has taught that national school some, but I don't know how much. That's right.
This was during Indian Territory.
That's right, before 1907, before statehood.
What did the people do for a living there besides raise cattle?
Well, there was quite a coal industry. There was strip mines out east of Katusa, and I'm not right sure of this, but later in years I heard of the Seneca Coal Company, and the name was very familiar to me, so I think that it was the Seneca Coal Company that had this train there. And this train the engine was left there for years, and the track run from where the depot is there at Katusa, where it was, and a block south, and then to Ford Street, and then east, out east, about 1.5 miles or 2 miles to the strip mines. And that was quite a thing then.
Well, all the mining were strip mines.
Yes, then it was. And then, of course, later years, the McNabb coal, they come along, and they had it's been quite a business ever since.
That's when the railroad came.
Oh yes, they came in way later. Oh yes, way later.
Well, did the people around there use coal to heat their homes?
Well, some did, and most of them used wood. You know,
what kind of a home or what kind of a house were you born in?
I was born in a little, I guess, a 2-room frame house. The little house is still there, but there's another one. It's in another house. It's built in with another house now.
Did you have any medical care then?
Yes, we had doctors back then. We had Dr. Warren. He was there in the 80s, but he went over into the 90s. And then we had Dr. Langford, and then after 1900, Dr. Smith. And
did you have any fears about all life and death in regard to sickness and that
And-
sort of thing that you recall?
No, not that I recall. We
You had
didn't.
a lot of confidence in your doctor? And
Oh, yes, we did. And Dr. Brown, now he was one of about the first one. Now, there was two Dr. Browns. Old Dr. Brown, we called the elder Dr. Brown, and then his son.
Did you have any tragedies in your own family?
No, not that
All
I can
your
recall.
children, all the children lived.
Well, my brother died, you see, one of them died before I was born, the oldest.
I see.
And then I lost a little infant sister in 1902. Yes, I did.
Diphtheria was a dreaded disease among children all about that time, wasn't it?
Well, I believe so. I think so.
And contagious diseases,
Yes.
were they common?
Well, smallpox is what we feared then, long back there. You know that it
What
was.
about the size of this school you attended?
Well, the last week of that school, there was only 5 of us going of the national school. We stayed because Miss Ward Mrs. Ward, yes, she wanted to go ahead and stay with her till the school was out. And my brother and I and 3 more stayed. Well, it was 5 of us stayed, and till the school was out in May.
What about, what do you recall about all the food that you had during those early days when you were a child attending school? Did you raise all the food yourself?
Well, of course we had gardens, but we had a lot of, people had lots of game and everything then for food. Katusa was quite a hunting place. There has been chartered cars come in. I can remember, yes, from the
What
east.
kind of game did they
Well, they had, then they had prairie chicken, and way back in the early, at the turn of the century, they had turkey and prairie chickens, and my father said some deer and different things. But I remember one car when I was railroad car, they chartered cars and come in, and they stayed at the old hotel there that was run by, they called him Pap Reynolds, John Reynolds, you know. And they would hunt for days there. And then I remember one,
Do
his
you
name was
recall
Harlan.
when the railroad first came in?
No, that was before I was born. The railroad came through in 82.
In 82?
Yes.
Was this the Frisco?
Yes, the St. Louis, San Francisco, same. And it went on through town. My father said it was built right on through town west of Katusa. And then a little later, they built it right on. I don't know, there was a delay some way. I don't remember just how
Did they have big cattle pens
Oh, yes.
at Katusa?
Yes, they did.
Where they shipped cattle?
Shipped cattle, yes. They used to drive them in from the south, and they shipped from everywhere around Katusa. It was a big shipping point.
Well, you've seen a lot of changes take place in and around Katusa and also Tulsa.
Yes, I have.
What about the size of the town of Tulsa in
Well,
its early days?
Now, what Tulsa has always been just a town, a pretty good town since I can remember, but Katusa has been too. Katusa was a good town, but Tulsa has a big settlement. Just a settlement, you know, a general settlement. But
and at the time of your early childhood, Tulsa was a pretty good-sized community too.
Yes, it was. Now, our first lumber yard was the Forest Lumber Company in Katusa.
Did you get go into Tulsa very often?
Not too often.
Just too far away?
Yes, it was. It's too far away. That's right.
How many people inhabited Katusa at any one time that you remember?
How many
Was
people?
it larger than it is right today?
Oh my, there was a lot of people there, lots of stores, and we had the bank, of course, and we had the hotel, and the one block was solid with businesses, and 2 drugstores back there, Newt Hill and Dr. Smith at the same time. That is in early real early,
It
90s.
looks like there'll be a revival in that town, the way things are going with the development of the Verdigris and the Arkansas River Valley.
Yes, it
and
does.
all these tugs and
That's right.
barges coming in there. It looks like it'll have quite a future. You already have a great many people that live in your community now that weren't there a few years ago.
Oh, yes, we sure do.
Is there anything else that you can recall that would be of interest to people about your early...
About the difference in the price of property there, I can tell you a little incident. My grandmother, she bought a lot there in town for $20, and she bought it from the government. That is the, I guess, Dawes Commission at Muskogee.
Yes.
And she paid $20 for that lot, and she paid for it $1.50 and $2, and I have all the receipts on that.
Is that right?
And that was in, well, I don't know when she started, but I think she finished in 1903, paying for it.
How much is that
And
worth
it's,
now?
well, now I don't know this is really true, but I think they're asking $10,000 for that lot now.
My goodness.
And that's on Oak Street. Yes.
Now, you married, did you marry a man in Katusa yourself?
No. Yes, I married in Claremore, here, Katusa. Yes, Katusa.
And he lived in this vicinity too?
No, he just come in here. I married.
I see. What's the size of your family now?
I have 2 sons and 1 daughter.
And this is your daughter?
That's
Mrs.
my daughter,
Hughes.
Mrs. Hughes.
And Mrs. Hughes, do you live in Katusa also?
Yes, I live right next door to my mother.
Well, that's wonderful. So you know a lot of history in common. Even when you were a child, things were a lot different than they are today.
Yes, the roads are altogether different. We just had what we call lanes then, most of them were fenced on account of stock law,
But the primary ways of people making a living there was through the cattle industry and the coal industry,
yes,
primarily, wasn't it?
that's right.
And most people that lived in the vicinity depended upon those 2 industries in some way related
Well,
to
in some way.
stores, business places, and that sort of thing.
Yes, the best I know about it, that's the way they were.
But I suppose the way of mining coal has also changed considerably. When they first started there, they didn't have any steam shovels or anything of that sort either, did they?
Well, no, I think they used what they call slips.
Yes.
And
they do that with mules and
horses.
Horses.
To get that. But this, now I'm pretty sure, I believe it was a Seneca Coal Company.
Yeah. Is this coal very deep there? Do they have to go very deep for it?
Well, not like they do in some states I've been in. They go, they don't have too much to strip off. Only now, of course, they've done quite a bit of it, and it's
getting... They call
getting...
this overburden, the amount of dirt above the coal, and I think it's about 8 or 10 feet.
I think it is now.
It?
Yes, now it is.
Well, this has been very interesting, and I would be glad to have you wind up our interview here with any particular thing that impressed you during your early childhood or during your early days in Katusa that we haven't touched upon.
Well, the only thing I can say is we just, nobody feared anybody or anything. They just never locked the door. It wasn't like it is now, People never thought about locking a door. I never knew of one being locked at my home in my life. No, they wouldn't have had a lock.
You didn't mention any churches.
Well, we've always had, the Baptist church and the Methodist church there. Now I think we have about 6 in that vicinity of different denominations.
But,
she used to play the organ at
Oh,
the Baptist church.
Yes,
She was
but
a little girl.
is that
yes,
right?
but I used to. Yes.
But you'd say, generally speaking, they were good people that lived there,
Oh,
law-abiding
yes.
and
Oh,
God-fearing
yes.
people.
And no
You didn't have any trouble.
No saloons in town because they wouldn't allow them in territory days, see. And then since statehood, we've never had one in Katusa.
Was there any problem with the white man giving the Indian, say, fire water, so to speak?
Well, I guess there was. Maybe a lot of that, probably, but that was, I don't know where they gave it to them or not. Or
But it wasn't a real problem.
No, it never was, since I can remember. Of course, they've had that trouble everywhere.
Yes.
No different to Katusa, I think. I think, in overall, it was really a good town, from what I can remember, and I knew it very well.
You don't think the Indian people were always respected and
Oh, yes, I think so.
and given an equal opportunity to do what they were capable of doing?
Oh, I
And-
think so.
Yeah.
I really do.
Well, it's been very interesting, and it's been a pleasure for me to learn about your early childhood and youth and rearing your own family in this community. This is one of the oldest communities in Oklahoma, I'm sure.
Yes, it is.
And I know you probably know a great many incidents that occurred in the community and in your own family that probably you prefer not to share.
Well,
I thought it was very interesting about the banks that you told us about and the fact that your own father, I believe it was, or was it your husband? Your father
It's my father.
borrowed the money at the bank,
yes,
and that was one of the first banks.
that's the first bank that was
Yeah,
there.
it is.
And the second one started,
I
in
noticed it had a capitalization of $10,000.
$10,000. That's right.
And the deposits were about $30,000.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, and in time, the banks, I guess they, with the development of Tulsa, they probably lost their customers to larger communities and expanded
Yes.
their deposits in Tulsa and that sort of thing is the reason the banks closed.
We were
But
glad
you do
to.
have a new bank there now, don't you?
Yes, we were glad to get this new bank. And now it finishes up, makes a town. We didn't
Yes,
have
it
a
does.
bank.
It's
It makes it very nice.
I have seen that, and I'm sure
Yes.
that it's grown tremendously.
Oh, it has.
Well, thank you very much, Mrs.
Thank you.
Hickman. Yeah, maybe we can... Okay. Miss Hickman, I just thought of something. I'd like to have you tell me something about, since we've got the Arkansas River Valley development that includes Katusa as the port of Katusa and is so involved in the shipping up and down the Arkansas River Valley, could you tell me anything about your early experiences with the verdigris as you would navigate it or cross it or anything of that sort? Anything interesting that you recall?
Well, I remember when we started to file, we were going to Muskogee, and we had to ferry across the Arkansas down there, and I know my father gave a man $25 to take us down there, and the water was up a little over the quicksand, and this man was scared to death. He wouldn't drive the team over it. He told my father, he said, "You'll have to take these lines and drive across." And my father, he had to drive onto the ferry boat on account of the water.
Is that right?
And
There were no bridges then?
no bridge there at all. And we went on down there that way.
That was just north of Muskogee?
Well, that would be, well, I don't know, really, to tell you the truth. It's just the one river's all we crossed. We
Yeah.
didn't go in it.
You only crossed one time?
Yes, one time. We only
Well, that'd
crossed
be
the river
right at
once.
the edge of, I'm assuming you probably went down through what's now Wagner. And
Yes,
then-
we did.
And then on down and crossed the Arkansas just north of Muskogee.
That's the way
And
we
that's
went.
where you forded the river?
That's right.
No bridge across there?
No bridge.
And he was afraid that...
Mr. A.J. Kelly, he lived on our place, one of the farm, and he had a team, and
Were you
wagon.
traveling in a wagon?
yes, we went in a wagon.
How long did it take you to go, you remember?
Well, I don't know. We stayed 2 nights.
Is that
We
right?
stayed 2 nights. And we tried to get a place to stay on the road, and they couldn't keep us, so we finally did find a place. It was pretty hard to get a place to stay,
Was
when you
it
was driving home.
common news that people would lose their life in fording rivers and things of that sort in those days?
Well, I was small. I don't remember too much about it, but I know this man was awful afraid, and I know I was after I seen he was afraid.
Was the river rather swift, as you
Oh, yes,
remember?
it was up, and I heard them talking about being up, out of the ordinary, so that's why I was afraid.
Was there as much sand in the Arkansas then as there is today?
Well, I guess there was. He said that, he told my father, he said, I don't want to try to drive through that quicksand. And I had a horror of it because I'd heard him talking about it, when I was a little child.
That's how a lot of people lost their lives.
Well, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, that's been very interesting. I didn't want to overlook anything since you lived right at the head of the Arkansas River Valley.
Well, it's quite different now. Yes, it
Yes,
is.
it is. You're all very proud, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, we are. We really
Going to
are.
Katusa.
We never thought it'd happen.
No, I didn't either.
It's been talked about for quite a while, but we never did think it would be a reality until now.
Well, I think we have to say if we was to name one man, we'd probably name Senator Kerr.
That's right. Senator Kerr. He
Well,
worked
thank you
on
very
it awful
much,
hard.
Ms. Hickman.
Thank you.
That's a hard thing